For adults with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms, every choice matters. Tremfya offers self-injection or intravenous infusion from the start. Tremfya is administered as injections under the skin or infusions through a vein every 4 weeks, followed by injections under the skin every 4 or 8 weeks. If your doctor decides that you can self-inject Tremfya, proper training is required. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active Crohn's disease and adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Explore what's possible. Ask your doctor about Tremfya today. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more or visit tremfyaradio.com.
To mark your freedom, most ex-slaves do any name you want.
They call my mama Rip, but her name Harriet. I want my mama name and my husband, Harriet Tubman.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Hollywood Gold. I'm your host, Daniela Taplin Lundberg, and I'm here with my right hand, Becca Camerata. Hey, Bex.
Hi, Daniela. How's it going on set?
Oh, man. The highs and lows of production. I have to tell you, I love this movie so much. I love our director so much, Hallie Myers. I think she's going to make a big splash with this movie. But you forget how hard production is, and this is no different. Every movie is a baby, and like it requires care and loving, and you know there are highs and lows, but it's going very well. We're very excited. So we're rounding the bend on week 2, loyal listeners.
Wow.
And so, you know, sometimes your other babies, there's collateral damage. And I haven't been able to record a pod this week. And so we decided to pull an audible here, right, Bex?
Yeah, I'm very excited about this very different episode.
Oh, God. Well, you guys, or at least I'm going to pretend that you guys have been peppering me to be the subject of an interview. So this week, what are we getting underway with?
This week, we're going to talk about a film that we produced at Stay Gold. We're going to talk about Harriet.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk to you. And we're going to flip the script a little bit. And we as in I am going to interview you about the process of making that film.
I'm the featured guest, so you can listen to it or not. But I think we'll have fun because I really do think that making of that movie was so long and so hard, and I can't wait to sort of jump in because it's something I'm so proud of. And there hadn't been a movie about Harriet Tubman until we made ours. There was a miniseries, and there was some television stuff, and she was certainly a character in many, you know, pieces of content about the era, but never about her herself, a feature film. So let's get going, and I'll stop controlling the narrative. You go ahead, Bex.
So I guess let's just start at the beginning. I know the film had a very long life and well before you got involved. So I'd love to know, when in the process did the project come to you? And what were your initial thoughts when you first read the script and you heard about the history of it? Tell me that, your first impression.
My dear friend Craig Castell had said, have you read this script? Have you heard about the script about Harriet Tubman? It's been on the shelf for 20 years, and I have a client who's sort of interested in it. And I said, no, I think it was called Fires of Freedom at the time or something like that. And apparently the film had been written in the early 90s for Disney. And Greg Allen Howard, who is a great writer who has recently passed, had been coming off of Remember the Titans. He wrote that great Denzel Washington movie, Remember the Titans, which I love so much. And this was a script that Disney had paid him to write and then never made. And famously, one of the studio execs in the 90s, I still don't know who it actually was, asked if Harriet could be played by Julia Roberts. And so the film, which you can't believe that stuff actually happens, but it does in Hollywood. So the movie was shelved for many, many years. And then I think Greg never lost heart and thought that it should be a film. So I read the script, and Greg had partnered with this fantastic producer who I sort of had long admired, named Deborah Martin Chase. And I thought the script needed a lot of work, but I thought the heart of the script was kind of extraordinary. It was the take on it was that like Harriet was this powerful, emboldened sort of superhero. And I sort of felt like, oh, this could be a true story about a superhero and America's first superhero. And so I thought, well, that feels equally entertaining, but also the kind of story that can really impact people, and we're always talking about that, right? At Stay Gold, like changing hearts and minds. So I met Deborah and we became fast friends. I mean, I consider her sort of a sister at this point. And we just decided to like push this boulder up a hill. And with every film, it takes a journey. And this one took, from the time I came on, and Deborah had been on for probably 2 years before me, but from the time I came onto it, it took probably 5 years to bring it to audiences. And that was like working on it every day.
It initially was a studio film, right? You said he had written it initially for Disney back in the 90s. And then I wasn't sure if Deborah was attached when you saw the script initially. So she was.
She was.
So at this point, it was Deborah and Gregory. Were they trying to go the studio route and then that didn't work? They went to studios again? Or were they determined to go independently? So they were only going to independent producers.
It's funny. I think that we were sort of open, and I think Deborah thought like this could be her first independent film. Like this was a film that like wasn't necessarily going to get made at the studios. And I sort of had like a different interpretation because I had only made independent films. And I was like, well, this feels like a big concept that if we structure it in the right way and pitch it in the right way, it feels like a big movie. And so I think we were a little bit open, and we just knew that we needed to build the package. We needed to get the script to a place where the market would see the opportunity. We needed to attach an actress. We needed to sort of build it up a bit. We needed to find our director first and foremost.
Yeah.
And so, the beauty of our company, Bex, is that we do have a little bit of capital, and we just started using that capital. We hired a few writers to sort of take a pass at the script. We sort of struck out in the early days of this. And then I think we had always had Kasi Lemmons in our minds as someone who would be the perfect person. But quite honestly, Kasi passed the first time we approached her with this. She was just like, this is too
I
big.
Didn't realize that.
Yeah. She was like, this is too big. It is such a burden to take on the legacy of Harriet Tubman. I'm not ready to do this. And we just thought we had no chance with her. And then a year passed, and Deb and I were just like we knew we needed to find a filmmaker who could really sort of inhabit the spirituality of Harriet, the courage of Harriet. And we really felt like Kasi was the person, but we knew we couldn't go at her like straight on because she'd already passed.
Yeah.
And so Frank Wooliger, who's a great agent, who's been Kasi's agent for 20 plus years, I just sort of went at it in a different way. And I just had a general with Kasi, and she came into the office. I don't know if you remember this, but she came into the office and we were just talking about things. And I was like, hey, Kasi, what about Harriet Tubman? And she got this look in her eye, and she was just I think she was just ready. She was suddenly ready to like take it on. And we sent her the draft. For whatever reason, she was like, I know how to do this. I can do this now.
Well, and I think already in this story, the timing, so essential, the way that things work out sometimes, that I think Gregory Allen Howard was right that the world probably wasn't ready for this in the 90s, and framing it in making Harriet a superhero, which in the movie, she really does come across as this real life superhero.
Yeah.
And now it's like the world had the context of Marvel movies and DC movies, and people understood the structure of a story in that way.
Yeah.
If you had attached a different director in that year between first sending it to Kasi and meeting with her again, it would have been totally different, right? And Cynthia might not have gotten involved. And so I think that the timing of this is so key. So once Kasi came on board and she said, okay, I think I'm ready. This is it. So then what was the process? Was there a different writer? Did she take it on?
It's funny you prompt the world was sort of ready. You're right in that Wonder Woman had just come out, maybe a year or two prior, and then Hidden Figures had just come out, and that had done huge box office and had done very, very well. And so suddenly the market, the Hollywood is just like, they don't like to take risks very often, but if they can spot a comparable film, they could say, oh, we can point to that, and maybe this movie will work. And so suddenly the market was a little bit more ready to finance or potentially finance a film with a Black female lead, right? And, you say that today, and, The Woman King now has just come out, and suddenly it's like, well, yeah, those movies can do very, very well. But at the time, it was like, we really could only point to like a few films, a handful of films that had done well, that had Black women in the lead. So the first thing that Deb, Casey, and I did was really get on the same page about the film. Deb and I were very, very clear that we wanted to make a film that could relate to multiple generations. We wanted kids and grandmothers and parents and, to all be able to come and see the film and be inspired by it. I think that we were all a little weary of slave fatigue and the notion that, any film that was going to cover the Black experience in the Civil War era was going to be one of pain and torture. And I think that we felt like Harriet was this beacon and was this like truly inspiring figure. And that if we could paint the lens a little bit more in that way, that she was breaking barriers and being courageous and just surpassing expectations at every turn, that would be a movie that would be not only inspiring, but successful. And so Casey was really, really, I think, understood that and understood the sort of spirit with which Greg had written it. And I remember Casey, like, she was just like, all right, let me go do this. And she went into a foxhole for like 3 or 4 months. I swear to God, she's like an incredibly spiritual person, but I feel like she convened with Harriet. She like listened to like, very specific music. She had Harriet imagery all around her, and she came out with a script that was basically the script we shot. And that is very rare. As you and I both know, development can be a real journey. And it is very rare that a writer can go in and say, I know what this needs to be, and then come out and everyone agrees that that's the thing. Yeah. And so that was sort of great. And then I was like, all right, well, I said that we'd make this if the script was good. You're like, oh, okay. And so all this time, I had sort of been juggling the waters of potentially financing this independently. And Deb was like, Daniela, like, this is really your domain. I am truly a strong creative producer, but I've only made movies in the studio world. Independent financing is really, your level, where your expertise comes in. And I was like, all right, I got this. So I'd managed to get a few investors who were willing to take this like big leap on the concept of Harriet and a movie about her. And so I'd raised probably between $10 and $12 million. Now, if you know the reality of that film, that movie, the gross of it is like more in the $20 to $22 million range. Yeah. And so the script that Casey wrote, if I had made it for $10 million, we would have had to do it in a black box. Like, there wouldn't have been the costumes. There wouldn't have been like the animals. There wouldn't have been the horse chases. There wouldn't have been like the wagons. It is so difficult to make a truly good independent feature on a budget.
When did you realize that? When did you realize that? Was it when the Casey's script came in that you were like, this is really good and this is the movie that should be made, and I think this is going to be too much money for an independent?
When I read it, I would just started like kind of trying to like figure out how to trick the studios into making it on our timeline. And I think, we could make this for $10 to $12 million, but it's not going to be very good. Really what I have to do is convince the studios that the train is leaving the station, that I have money in the bank, which I sort of did, and then convince them that it behooves them to come onto the film sooner rather than later, because they're going to miss a real opportunity. And so from that moment on, I hired a line producer to put together like a $10 million budget. Shake Hammer, bless his heart.
Just to see.
Just like the best guy ever. Yeah. And we went scouting. We went down to Charleston. We went all over. We were going to shoot the movie in New York, like in upstate New York, because they were remember that? They were really offering some good incentives. And all the while, Shay is working away in our office and is just, we're making this movie because Daniela, you said we're making this movie. And I was like, yep, totally. And I'll never forget. I was like, all right, guys, we're going to create this artificial auction. So I sent the script. And at that time, we had attached Cynthia Erivo. Deb and I had gone to see her in The Color Purple. And she was just this powerhouse. I mean, no one knew who she was yet, but she won the Tony for that year. And she was 5'0". Her voice was touched by the gods. And we were like, this is our Harriet. This woman is powerful. She's strong physically, but she's small in stature. She can act a storm. She can sing, which Harriet really did. She sang all the time to sort of communicate with the enslaved people that she was trying to save. And we were like, this is the woman. This is the person who's got to play the part.
I'm gonna be free or die.
God damn it, bitches!
I'm Harriet Tubman, leader of this group. We do what I say.
She had never been she was only a Broadway actress and a West End actress, right? She had never been in a TV show or movie or anything, right? So you were taking a risk on her.
She had two things coming out, which we pointed to. She had that Steve McQueen movie, Widows. Right. If you remember that. And then she had another movie that was like a noir thriller directed by the guy who did Martian. What is his name? I can't remember. We'll fill this in later. But anyways, we were like, people are starting to understand like what a talent she is. And we kept like, we were like, we can point to this with the studios and say like, she's on the rise, that kind of thing.
And it just kind of wasn't a question. Like you, Deborah and Kasi were all on the same page. We're like, she is Harriet. Yeah. We really were just like, we gotta like the idea that we were going to like attach someone who was that young and small in stature and who could sing, that's like a rare combination of talents that she has. And also like, you didn't want to be pulled out of it too much by casting someone who was so well known. You just had to like go with Harriet is the star. Harriet Tubman is the star of this film. And that's the event. It's not any one actor. It's not like, oh, Tom Hanks in this, Harriet Tubman is the event. And we're going to show audiences all the things she did and light it up. So anyways, I'll remember I sent the script all around town and there was some positive responses, but it wasn't weekend sale of Harriet. That was not what was happening. And so what I did was if Peter Kujawski ever hears this, he'll probably laugh. But what I did was I called, there were probably 4 or 5 studios that like showed interest. And I was like, I'll never forget. It was on my birthday. And I was like, I called Participant and Focus and Amazon, and there were like a couple studios like that were like, yeah, we like it, like it's interesting. And I was, Focus really wants to meet next week, so if you guys want in, you're going to have to meet next week. And then I'd call Amazon or I'd call Participant and I'd say, well, Amazon really needs to meet next week, so if you want in, you're going to have to do you're going to have to do this next week. And they were like, oh okay. So suddenly we had 4 pitches in one day. And but none of them, it was all pretend. It was like there was no ticking clock. No one was really that excited about it. I had a few $1 million in the bank, but this is all a shell game. So Kasi and I fly out because Deb had this long trip planned in Africa, and she was like, I'm going to go for 2 weeks, but you guys go do it. Worst case scenario, we can make this movie for 10 million. And I was like, yes, for worst case scenario, we'll make it for 10 million. So Kasi and I we go to Amazon and we meet with Ted Hope, who was running independent film at that time. And we pitch and we do like a really good pitch, and it went well. It was good. It was like, I remember like Kasi kept comparing it to really small films, like really small independent films. And I was like, hey, Case, let's compare it to like Braveheart. Okay. Let's not compare it to like some sweet independent film that we all love. And she's like, okay, got it. And so we go out of this meeting and it's 3 executives and us. And I'll never forget, Bex, I fall flat on my face walking down the stairs. Oh my God. gosh.
My shoe falls out from under me and I literally fall knees face, like full embarrassment. And
wait, in front of the
Ted Hope.
executives?
Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, that's not a good omen. So Kasi and I leave. And in the thing, she had just mentioned John Toll, who was this epically good DP that, Bex, we came to really love. But he did shoot Braveheart. He shot so many incredible films that really are big in scope. And Kasi had just gone to Sundance, like a Sundance lab, and she had just met John Toll. And in our wildest dreams, we weren't thinking get the biggest DP in the world to shoot it. And she had just met him and they struck up a friendship. And he was like, well, why wouldn't you send that to me? And so after that pitch, I was like, are you serious? And she's like, yeah, he's reading it. And I was like, what? And I don't know if it was that day or a day after or a day before, something in this area where John Toll calls her and he's like, I love this. I want to do this. And that, I remember for Deborah was, oh, this is real. This is going to be a big movie with scope and beauty. So then we go to Participant. They liked it too. Then we go to Focus. They loved it. And suddenly we have like a couple studios really into it. They're like, yeah, we want to do it. Let's go. Let's go. I remember we go back to the hotel and we get a call from both Focus and Participant. We want to do it. And I'm like, oh my God, it worked. Like Kasi starts dancing in the hotel. It was one of those moments in Hollywood where you're like, our plan worked. We orchestrated this event that wasn't even real. We did the work though. The script was good. Her vision was incredible. And we had chosen this actress that people were really excited about. And then we were literally shooting 3 months later with Focus Features, being super on board. It was crazy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I have to say, I think one of your superpowers that I've witnessed over the years is your ability to just push things forward and keep things going and have the faith that it's going to work out. Even when it seems like, how
I need to hear this right now, literally.
How in the world is this going to happen? And I tend to be the one who's like, who's the Debbie Downer, like, Daniela, this is never going to work. And you're like, yes, it is, Bex. And I have to say, it always works. You always,
so far,
there's something that happens at the end. There's like the Hail Mary that comes in gets the movie off the ground.
It gives me such anxiety.
Me too.
Every time I make a movie, I swear to God, my dad today was like, you look really skinny, Dan. And I was like, it's called an anxiety diet, Dad. I haven't eaten in 3 months because I'm so stressed about making movies. But you're right. It's like you kind of just have to do that thing where you're like, I believe we're going. And that's just what you have to do. Because if you don't believe, why would anyone else believe, right? If you're supposed to be the leader of this journey, you got to go. You got to go and you've got to convince other people to go. And convincing takes time. That's the other thing I realize about this business is it's like, sometimes I'll send out a script over a weekend and someone doesn't read it. And I'm like, oh, they hate it. This sucks. This idea is terrible. Like, oh, what am I doing? And you just have to keep pounding the pavement.
Yeah.
Sometimes because...
And some of those seeds that you plant years later, they can come back and they can actually come to fruition.
That's right.
So then you're off to set and the movie was shot in Richmond, Virginia. And why was that decision made to change it from upstate New York?
We got to look up the commissioner of the Virginia Film Office. I can't remember his name, but what a gem. But he basically reached out to Shay and was like, listen, we know you're shooting in upstate New York. We're going to offer you every incentive we have to come shoot in Virginia. And Shay literally got convinced of this in an hour. At one point we were prepping in New York and then we come back from LA. He's like, no, we're prepping in Virginia. We're going down. And the wife of the governor was so adamant about Harriet because she was an educator. She was so adamant about us shooting in Virginia that she had a small creative slush fund that she could use for whatever she wanted, education, culture, whatever she wanted, she could put money towards. And she gave us $500,000 of her slush fund to come shoot in Virginia. So they were giving us every incentive possible to make it in Richmond. And so we were like, all right, let's go. So that was the decision to do that. And then casting was like a whole other thing, because now the studio was involved and they wanted to create some value where they could. And so Cynthia was a real unknown, and they're like, we have to figure out a way to cover our investment a little bit, because we know Harriet is the event here, but we need to make pre-sales. We need to know that this is a more expensive endeavor, because they did end up punching the budget up to like the $20 million range. Even with all the Virginia tax incentives, they were like, we need some value here. And so the next person we cast was Leslie Odom Jr. And then,
he was kind of fresh off of the
Hamilton.
Success,
he had just won,
right?
he had won the Tony for Hamilton. That felt like really hot and cool. And then the part of Gideon Brodus. We had been talking about a lot of actors in that sort of age range. I remember we had talked about Nick Holt a lot. Yeah. Casey had a meeting with Nick Holt. We really liked Nick Holt, but Focus was very, very excited about Joe Alwyn, who just recently broke up with Taylor. We were also devastated. But but Joe had just come off of a few features for Focus, and they thought he was going to be a big, big star. And so they really pushed for Joe. And Joe he is such a good, sort of subtle, great, quiet but powerful actor. And so that felt really, really exciting. And then Cynthia, to her credit, thought that Janelle Monáe should play the part of, God, what was her name? Marie Buchanan.
Yes. I was going to say, because that name changed a couple times, to be fair.
But so Cynthia and Janelle were very good friends. And Cynthia, I remember, called Janelle Monáe and was just like, this is a really, really important movie. And I was so impressed, because Janelle just was like, yeah, you're right, I'm going to do it. And it was like a 3 or 4 day part. And Janelle was sort of probably the biggest star in our film at that time, because she had just come off of Hidden Figures. Like, she was like a real established star. And to her credit, she was like, I believe in this movie and I believe in the power of it. And I'm just going to, help you guys get this made. And I remember that, because I remember feeling like that a lot of times, like big stars, they're just so surrounded by their teams that it's so hard to penetrate and like communicate directly about the impact of something, or, not only is it artistically impactful, but it is socially impactful, and she seemed to understand that right away. And then we just filled the rest of the cast out with just great, great character actors that we cast with Kim Coleman, who's like such a genius casting director. Yeah. And that was like a long, really, really good process. But I think every actor in that movie is just so superb.
I agree. And they're also believable. And it's just, I think that cast is amazing.
Jennifer Nettles, that was like such an interesting thing. She plays Eliza Brodus, the mother of Gideon. And I remember she's a big country music star, but she wrote a letter to Casey after she auditioned. And she was like, I know I play the villain in this movie, but I believe like I have a fan base that would so benefit from seeing this story. And if I can help shine a light on this like incredible historic story, then I want to do that. And it was like, even thinking about it, I get a little teary, because it was so honest, and she like put so much heart into that letter. And that was the thing that got her the role.
Now we need to work together to find this thief and burn her at the stake like Joan of Arc.
Yes.
For adults with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms, every choice matters. Tremfya offers self-injection or intravenous infusion from the start. Tremfya is administered as injections under the skin or infusions through a vein every 4 weeks, followed by injections under the skin every 4 or 8 weeks. If your doctor decides that you can self-inject Tremfya, proper training is required. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active Crohn's disease and adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Explore what's possible. Ask your doctor about Tremfya today. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more or visit tremfyaradio.com.
I'm gonna do what I gotta do. Go wherever I gotta go. However I gotta do it. To free as many slaves as possible.
So now you're in Virginia and everyone's cast and we're off to the races. And, I remember so much from that set. You and I and Deborah were there every day. And there were a lot of late nights in the woods, in the mud, because so much of the movie is Harriet running through the woods and then going back and getting her family in Winter at Night. And, so obviously we had to shoot in the woods in Winter at Night. So, how was the production for you? What do you remember?
Bex, I think you remember this. I was the mother of 3 small children. My kids live in Connecticut. I was commuting every Monday at 4 a.m. to get down to the production office or to set, and then leaving on Friday night to go home. And that, I would just say, like, for me personally, it was probably the most difficult time for me in my career, because I knew on the one hand, this was a huge step up for me. It was me making my first studio movie. I had just come off of making Honey Boy in Los Angeles. And then right after that went directly into Joe Bell, which was shot in Utah with Mark Wahlberg and Ray Marcus Green. And so it was a really successful time for our company. But I would say for me, it was pre-pandemic. I was sort of on this hamster wheel of just taking the opportunities that were coming, embracing them and trying to be the best producer I could be. But I can say this honestly, my family suffered, right? And there are probably things that, I'm so proud of Harriet, but there are probably things that I would have done a little different. I don't know exactly how I would have done them different, but I will just say this: family first, family first, family first, family first. And that's the lesson I took from that time. But, I got through it. I learned so much. And I would say the production itself was, Kasi Lemmons is such a pro. And by that, I mean, she has so much experience. So things that would maybe rattle a first-time filmmaker do not rattle Kasi. She's seen it all. She's been doing this for years and years and years. And so there is a certain joy in producing someone who has seen it all and doesn't freak out every time something goes wrong, because every day something goes wrong, right? I mean, Bex, do you remember the day where... This isn't funny, but we were shooting a scene running through the forest, and and Harriet and her family are escaping Maryland, and we're running through the forest, and our lead, the eldest brother, maybe Robert Tubman, I can't remember his name, steps on a hornet's nest, and the entire cast gets surrounded by hornets and gets stung.
Oh gosh, I remember that so vividly.
And Robert was also deathly afraid of bees. He was freaking out. That thing in Jerry Maguire, that bees can smell fear. They smelled it on Robert. And they literally chased him out into the clearing. He was stung 10 times. He's an enormous man. He's 6'4", and he was shaking in his boots. And that was just average day. We got the medic to come. He went to the hospital. He was absolutely fine. That was it. That was the shot. And we never got that shot again. That was it.
Right.
And it was used in the film, by the way.
Yeah. Well, and what I remember from that was that he comes running out and he's freaking out, and Cynthia comes out, and miraculously Cynthia didn't get a single sting.
Not one.
But she went over and she was the one that calmed him down. That's right. She just grabbed him and she was like, "Hey, you're okay. Yeah. It's okay.
Oh my God.
Calm down." And she just reached her hands in there and a swarm of bees and grabbed him and calmed him down. And I literally, it was one of those moments where I was like, oh, she is touched by God. This
so
is
classic Cynthia.
Crazy.
Totally. She was always doing shit like that. Yeah. Always protecting the other cast and crew. She was always, you remember the day that she had to go up to her neck in water?
Oh my gosh.
She's
that
like,
is,
she
I
couldn't
was
swim
going to ask
and like,
you to tell that story.
oh
that,
my God. So we're shooting a late
chills.
night and Cynthia is like, the water's pretty cold. I mean, 55-degree water is very cold.
Very
It was
cold.
maybe
and it
60,
was like 3
but it was 3 a.m. It's like, you never want to be in cold water that way. So anyway, Cynthia does it. She like goes up to her neck, she like gets out, she's fine. And then we have to do a stunt double in there because we've got to shoot various shots and we're not going to have Cynthia in there for like 6 hours. And I'll never forget like Cynthia just being like, are you taking care of my stunt double? She can't be in there. I'll do it. I'll do it. And I'm like, Cynthia, no, it's an insurance thing. We can't have you in the water for more than like 10 minutes. We're keeping her warm. We've got all the like warmers right by her. And she's like, I can't have it. I can't have it. And she's trying to get in the water herself. She was always pulling stuff like that.
And I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember that day because I remember watching that and just being like, I can't believe that I'm watching her walk into this freezing river up to her neck at 3 a.m. Right. And I remember we had, as you do when you shoot things like this, we had the full body like wetsuit for her that she was supposed to wear under her clothes, under her dress to keep her warm and to keep the water off her skin. And she refused to wear it.
She would not wear it.
Right?
Why wouldn't she wear it? I can't even
because
remember.
She was like, Harriet didn't have that.
Oh, right. She was trying to go method.
Yeah. And I was like, God. Oh my gosh. I
incredible.
I get chills.
She's so crazy.
But, and I do have to say, she, other than a couple times where we just couldn't have her do it, she really did all of her own stunts, right? She was like working out in her hotel room like at 4 a.m. before coming to set every day.
If you go on that woman's Instagram, she like can plank for like 43 minutes. Like she's like, she is like a superhero in her own right. Yeah. Really, really so powerful and strong. So she really could do fast runner, like all of that stuff is like, it's I think part of the reason the movie works so well is that she's an athlete, that's Harriet, like running through the winter, escaping dogs and horses and all that stuff. It's very believable, the stuff that she's doing. And she that's just who she is. She just trains every day for life. But that was so incredible. Bex, you remember the Rainbow Day? Were you there that day?
Yeah, that's the other story I was going to ask you to tell. I remember crying that day. That was just the most incredible experience.
Every day on a set it's a whole journey. It's a whole lifetime on a set. And like you start off and sometimes it's like everyone's in a bad mood and, people show up, they didn't sleep the night before, you're on long days anyways. And so this day, it was completely rainy. We were shooting exteriors. We had to get through the day. And the last shot of the day was Harriet crossing into Pennsylvania, into Freedom. And it was downpouring, rain. And Shay was like, let's not do this. Like, let's not waste the hours. Let's bank the hours. We don't need this scene. We'll survive. It's not essential to the storytelling. Like, we can just allude to the fact that she crossed over to Pennsylvania. And Kasi, like, to Casey's credit, Kasi was just like, I'm begging you. I'm begging all of you to just believe in me. And we're going to go to the top of this hill. And the mud, you can't even walk up the hill because there's so much mud. And
I remember that they had to they were pushing the camera on and they had to
it's like those, those gators with like the huge tires. Like we had to gator everything up. I remember slipping in the mud 5 times and I was like, oh, this is going to suck. I don't even want to be here. This is going to suck so much. Yeah. And so I go back to the trailer and let's just get through this. Let Kasi get her shot. It's going to be fine. Like Cynthia's in the worst mood. She does not want to do it. I'm like, oh God, I don't need another conversation with my lead who's so angry that she's working another long day. I've had enough. So I come out of the trailer and I walk up the hill, and as God is my witness, we're just getting the camera set and the clouds part. The clouds completely part and the sun is setting and an enormous double rainbow over the mountaintop. And it's in the film, it's in the trailer. Go back and watch it. It brings tears to my eyes now. I start crying. Everyone's weeping. John Toll, who's, pretty old in his years, seen a lot. He's weeping. The gaffer's weeping. Everyone's like, in all our lives, we've never seen anything like this. Harriet steps over into Freedom. She like frames the sun with her hands. It's the most beautiful shot ever.
Yeah.
And people talk about it to this day that were on that set. They were like, remember that day? Remember that day? And it was the greatest moment.
Yeah.
And it was like, here's Harriet, you know, tapping us on the shoulder, being like, you guys are doing good work. And stuff like that would happen on the set all the time. Like there was a day that a praying mantis just arrived on Cynthia's shoulder. Do you remember that day?
I remember that.
So weird.
Gosh,
and like just like hanging out with Cynthia. And it was just like, it was so bizarre. And so the shoot was long. It was wet. It was the rainiest season in Virginia in like 20 years. It was crazy. There was like a hurricane. We had to shut down production one day because like our hurricane swept through. Like stuff like that was always happening, but we always had the guidance of Harriet. And I would say Kasi and Deborah are also incredible leaders. And I think it was also weird for a lot of the crew because we were 3 female leaders and not, you know, we had a lot of like seasoned crew. And I remember Leslie Odom being like, this is the first time I've had all female bosses. And we were like, get used to it. You know, like this is, you know, the future is now.
Tell old Pharaoh to let my people go.
For adults with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms, every choice matters. Tremfya offers self-injection or intravenous infusion from the start. Tremfya is administered as injections under the skin or infusions through a vein every 4 weeks, followed by injections under the skin every 4 or 8 weeks. If your doctor decides that you can self-inject Tremfya, proper training is required. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active Crohn's disease and adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Explore what's possible. Ask your doctor about Tremfya today. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more or visit tremfyaradio.com.
God has shown me the future, and my people are free. My people are free!
I'm just getting chills, you know, just remembering some of the stories because it was just incredible. And then I remember every day we would go back and we'd make our little like tacos and we'd sit there. Do you remember that?
Bex, those were the best. We'd show up in our little apartment. I'd get my avocado out.
And I'd get my chocolate.
You'd get your chocolate. We'd get some Sour Patch Kids. And we'd take off our muddy boots that were just encased in mud. And
we'd watch dailies.
And we'd watch dailies. And we would just be like, oh, this could be really good. This could be really special.
So then my question now is, you know, in the watching of those dailies that we would do every day, were you really confident? Were you like, this is going to be good? Were you having conversations with Focus and were they feeling confident about releasing it? And like, did you just know?
Well, I think you as a producer have like a vision of how you think something's going to get out into the world, hopefully, right? Like that's the reason you take it on, because you think it'll make impact and you kind of have an idea of the way it will penetrate audiences. And I would say that we always thought America's first superhero.
Yeah.
Make her poster like the Wonder Woman poster, but make it Harriet, right? And so if you look at her early posters, it's like a lot of badass silhouette imagery, like the Wonder Woman poster that like has her hat tipping down and like, you know, her kind of in these like amazing coats and ready for battle, you know? Yeah. And I think to us, it made it more of a ride than a school lesson, you know? And I just thought you have to figure out a way to like lure audiences in. And Focus, to their credit, Jason Cassidy and Peter Kujawski just understood that right away. And I think Jason really, really ran with that. You know, he leaned into all that imagery and they really loved the film. They loved the film. The film tested a couple times and tested in the 90s. And that's just, as we know, loyal listeners, like that doesn't always happen. And so when you do have that happen with such an important piece of history, then you're giving your studio the tools to go for it. So we released in the fall, and they did this kind of like dual thing where they were appealing to wide audiences, Black audiences, religious audiences, education front. Like they were hitting the film on every sort of front that they could, because Harriet really inhabited so many things for so many people. And then they were like, let's like go for it. Let's try to get Cynthia an Academy Award nomination, because that performance is that good. That's like when that machine happens and you hire Cynthia Schwartz and you start having like tastemaker screenings and sending Cynthia to every festival. And we went to Toronto and we went to London and we went to all these festivals, and just reminding people what a good movie the film is. And
that whole process, once the distributor or the studio determines that they're going to do an awards campaign for a film, it becomes a totally different thing. We've been involved in a couple of them, and it's one thing when your distributor, they're like, here's the marketing campaign and we're going to release it and all this stuff. But then once they're like, okay, we're going to go after awards, like you said, it becomes this whole beast where you have to hire a specific awards publicist and go on this whole tour. And it's exhausting.
You think it's going to be like so fun, and it really is. I mean, it's so fun to be in a room with all the other filmmakers that are being lauded that year and go to all those events and award shows and all those things. But, I think after a while you realize like that's not the thing. The thing is like the movie and the making of the movie and the impact that the movie has had. And it's really great to do all those other things, but quickly that wears a little thin and you really just want to like go back to work. But the sort of ultimate moment was Deb and I were dates to the Academy Awards, and Cynthia sang at the Academy Awards, and it was such
nominated for 2 Oscars.
And she was nominated for 2 Oscars for the song and for which she co-wrote and for her performance. And I think it's like, it's so rare that all the hard work gets recognized in that way. And so we really got glammed up and took the pictures and did all the things. But it was such a journey, and it's one of those movies that I think they'll be like, what movies have you made? And that's the one that people, seem to be recognizing, and the one that they seem to be able to watch with their kids and with their parents. And, it's one of those cross-generational films that really seems to have impacted people in a really positive way. And so it's just, I'm very proud.
I like you said in the beginning, that was kind of one of the goals, is that you wanted this to be cross-generational. And I think it really succeeds in that, like you could see it with your kids. I went to see it with my parents and my 70-year-old aunts and uncle and my 15-year-old cousin all at the same theater, and everyone enjoyed it. So I think it really succeeds. And it did pretty well. It did pretty well at the box office. It wasn't like a smash.
But it made in the 40s, which these days, like you can be very, very grateful for. But yeah, it was a real lesson, because you get those statements. And again, it was like one of my first studio movies, but you really, you start to understand the economics of these movies, and you make a movie for 20. If you release it theatrically, you're giving 50% of that to the theater chains. Like that's just the natural economics of that. And then you have to spend money on top of that to get the film out and promoted. And so then you're really looking for like your ancillary stuff, iTunes and, whatever other
airline
and, international and all these other things to sort of contribute to the nut. And it's a tough business. I've actually been thinking about this a lot, but like piracy is a huge, huge issue in the entertainment industry, and something I sort of want to start talking to people about. But like, there's some crazy stat, in China, it's like 80% of people just watch stuff for free. Like they're not paying for stuff. And in the US, I don't know what the number is, but it's extraordinary how many people are just illegally downloading films and not paying for them. So it's sort of the next barrier I think we have to cross in terms of keeping the entertainment business alive. But that's another pod, Bex.
Yeah, we'll do a side pod on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, I don't know. I think Harriet, and I'm going to speak for myself, but I think for you too, Harriet is one that just will go down in history for us as such a big, impactful film, for us as producers and just for the world in general. And I'm very, very proud of that film, as I know you are too.
Yeah.
And so I think this was just really great to hear the whole process of it and hear the experience from start to finish.
We'll see if anyone listens, but
actually listens to this.
We have a few loyal listeners. I have my husband and my mom. So
Mark Mandel. Shout out to
We love you, Mark Mandel. Keep listening. All right, guys, you do the wrap up because you're the host.
Oh, right. Weird. Well, thank you guys for listening to another episode of Hollywood Gold. Keep listening, keep subscribing. Always feel free to DM us with any suggestions for films and producers you want us to interview, and stay gold.
Stay gold.